So you just said participation, and it sent like a ripple through me. And I think you and I have talked about this before, that, participation gets talked about so much with carriers. I know brokers clearly are interested in it, want to see that succeed. Do you? My assessment has always been at the HR level. It hasn't been focused on as much as we might like. Right. A lot of times it's more of okay, well, we installed the program and maybe it wasn't right for everybody. And that's obviously so. Nobody's expecting 100%. Right. But do you feel like today that story, as you get into those client conversations, is going in the right direction, is becoming increasingly important? I mean, what's your sense around participation at that level?
Yeah, well, I think it's still, there's a little apprehension to overselling. So you have to remove that. You remove that, everything changes. Well, now what are the right products for our employees? I had a conversation recently with an employer and the broker, and it was a fantastic conversation. They had this carrier. They love this carrier. It's been going very, very well in their eyes. And then we started talking about it. Well, it's because the employer likes this product. They had good experience with this specific product. And they had, in my opinion, and they still have, the wrong product, which will be changing later. But all I brought up is I said, look, it doesn't matter how great you like the products. You have less than 5% of all your employees participating. Well, why is that? Right. Well, it came down to two things. Number one, by far, was cost. They were paying too much for their income. Like, you can't have, in my opinion, an employee spending, making $15 a month shouldn't be spending $200 a month in voluntary benefits. And it's just, again, it's too much. Or at this price point, I think a simple accident plan was over $40 a month for an individual. Well, we showed them a plan that was actually much less with more benefits.
Sure.
And at the end, they're like, okay, well, you're right. If participation isn't that big, we really have to look out for our employees.
Yeah.
And it was a light that went off. And I see this happening with our broker partners. I see this with employers now, because they just kept thinking, well, we'll just add something else. If employees want it, they'll buy it. We don't care what the cost is. I just don't think that's really what it's anymore.
That's really encouraging to hear, because, here we are, a company that, I love talking about participation, because this has been a great industry, a booming industry, even with, moderate, even decreases in participation over the years. And for me, I think it's that metric that everybody should be like in lockstep behind. And the reason is not to say, woohoo, as an employer, right? Great, we had this really great turnout on the program, and a bunch of people bought products. That's not it, right? The word and the reality is that many people are now protected and have that additional layer of protection. And there should be another driving factor behind all that in my mind, and it's that if you look at the demographics of most groups, that alone tells you that there should be greater than 5% participation, because in that 5%, you have people with similar marriage situation, family, dependents, age range, incomes, assets, and all these different things that if something happens to, Jim, and the same thing happens to Sally, they both are going to take a hit, but only one of them gets the product. Right? Maybe one of them didn't have the right opportunity to be educated about the right way. Would active election improve that? I think it would. Would having different ways for people to learn about their benefits? It would. So it really boils down to more being the metric that tells you that, are we getting appropriate protections? Again, it's not going to be 100%. It's not going to be a product everybody believes they can afford or need. But that number going north inside just about every group is a good thing. It's a good thing for the group. It's a good thing from protection. I just think there's so much in demographics we can look at to say those were not the only people who needed and probably would invest in this. It's just that's the only people we reached. Right?
Yep. Active election is key. We're a huge believer in it. They elect or decline, then it's on file. They can't come back and say they didn't have, they didn't at least know it was there. But the cost is still key, and then providing the right benefits for the company, and having a real strategy, because one demographic isn't going. Actually, I'll give you a great example. Accident plan is number one by far. We still love the plan, But when we look at a group of cardiologists and the average income is, $200,000, $300,000, an accident plan probably isn't going to be their number one plan. Now that's an extreme, or we're not going to bring in a $50,000 or $100,000 critical illness plan for a demographic that's nonprofit making minimum wage. We have to design the plans around the company. And then that last piece is create education. And it can be celebration. All of these drive participation. Absolutely. But nothing's worse than when an employee could have had a claim and they didn't even know that the benefits existed. They had no idea that they were there. And especially if there are the right plans in there, then I think that's just tough to swallow. Or on the flip side is maybe that they had a really bad experience in the past because they felt like they were forced to buy, because they said, if you don't get it, you're going to get cancer. Well, I mean, that's horrible, but I've heard all kinds of things. They need to not feel like they have to buy, but to give them the education to allow them to buy. And I know I repeat that a little bit, but I feel wholeheartedly about that. That's a lot of why we're here today. So absolutely agreed. You know what? I've taken a lot of your time today. There's a lot more questions I have, which I know you and I can always talk offline. I'm very, very appreciative for everything that you do. Is there any last things you want to add before we wrap this up?
Yeah, no, again, just to say thank you to you for having these discussions with people across the industry and playing the role that you all play. We've been saying, when we get the chance to talk to brokers, we are constantly telling them that, you don't necessarily make this 100% a part of your business, right? Just because, I'm coming from a place where that's 100% of our business, you don't have to become full-blown experts. You can find partners. You can go work and leverage relationships with others that have made this their life's work. And that partnership is going to yield better outcomes for everybody. Not the least of which is, a lot of times less work for them, right? Because they've got somebody like you who can help with so much of that. So I think what you're doing is changing the market and evolving it. And I think we're going to see an incredible next 5 years. And from a growth perspective, all the numbers are going the right way. More brokers selling it, more employers offering it, and more employees investing in these voluntary programs. And when you can see all those dials reading that way, there's a lot of opportunity to get people protected. So thanks for having me on, Jack.
Thank you so much, Nick. Have a fantastic day, and look forward to connecting again soon.
You too. Be well.